Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good evening for those of you who are more on the East Coast, and good late afternoon for those of you on the West Coast. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is the La Maison de Rouge Monday night weekly live broadcast. I'm your host, Lucy Sweetkill, one half of the duo that is La Maison de Rouge. A little bit about who we are. LMDR is dedicated to expanding the BDSM experience by discussing, educating, and informing our audiences about the intersections of kink, wellness, sexuality, spirituality, and social activism. We aim to create a safe space for discussing these topics, as well as providing an avenue for our guests to share their stories and experiences. Thank you again for joining us. Tonight, our guest is professional Maneater, head mistress of Wicked Eden, Fetish media mogul, mentor, and educator, and leader of the Wicked Collective. Please welcome Goddess Andrea Snow. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. Let me kind of do a little housekeeping for those of you who are going to be joining us for the first time. If you do have any questions, please leave them to the end, write them down. We will have a Q&A at the end. So for all of you joining, just remember that. So, well, my brain is a little foggy. I'm going to give everyone a self-warning. I got my second vaccine shot, and I don't know if you've been vaccinated yet.
I have. Congratulations. The second one's a doozy.
Yeah. And so I feel like, did you feel off for a while, just mentally off, like hazy?
Yeah, the brain fog was it's definitely noticeable. I scheduled mine on Thursday, so I didn't have to be a person again until Monday. So yeah.
Well, that's the thing is I had mine, but I've been working and traveling, and so now like my brain is sort of coming together, but it's still quite foggy. But so thank you again for joining us. And for any of our, for all our new guests, we love to ask your origin story. We're big fans here of comic books and anime and all the really great stories. And I feel like, femdoms are superheroes themselves. So how did you get to the place you are now? How did it all start?
I usually actually refer to myself as being a supervillain, professional supervillain. So in fact, my bio used to say professional supervillain.
Oh, even better.
My origin story is I have been a sex worker since I was 20. I guess it's a little 19, somewhere around there. I know it's a really long time ago now. I had gotten out of a not so great relationship in which that the individual had convinced me to stop going to college. I had already gotten kind of a good white collar job. I was working in marketing for an accounting firm, and he's like, "You don't really need to go to work. You don't need to go to college anymore. You can just drop out." And when that relationship fell apart, I realized that was a dumb thing. And here I was with, I was too young to really know better, and I have a long-standing history with dance. And so the friend of mine who had just become the VIP manager at the Hustler Club in Baltimore had said, there's $1,000 for the amateur night on Monday nights. And you don't understand, like, I was not a glamorous person. I still wouldn't actually classify myself as being that glamorous in real life. Like, I feel like professionally I'm very glamorous. Don't let any of this fool you. It's been taught. Like I didn't own a pair of high heels. I wore tennis shoes and turtlenecks and blue jeans. Like it was pretty nerdy, still pretty nerdy. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, you should do this. Like, you have this background in belly dance, and you've like, I've seen you dance. You're amazing. And I was like, no one, I've never even been to a strip club. Actually, that's true. I think I've been to a strip club once. Yeah. And I was like, I don't even know what I would do. And he's like, just get up on stage and do like a belly dance routine. And $1,000 is a lot of money, when you're looking at like, what am I going to do with my life right now? And I don't really have the job that I thought I was going to have, et cetera. And so I thought, well, I don't know, what do I have to lose? Well, what I didn't know is that Larry Flynt had bought up most of the Baltimore block and had consolidated a number of small strip clubs into his monstrosity of a club in downtown in the red light district of the Baltimore block area of that town. And it was this monstrosity of a strip club. I'm talking about 3 stories. It had giant granite stages, a glass VIP stage. Everything was covered in velvet. It was the most magnificent thing I'd ever seen, right? And to like a 19-year-old girl who's never worn a pair of high heels before, I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. Well, in the process of having bought up all these other clubs, he'd also put a lot of other dancers out of work. And in order to work at this particular club, you had to win the amateur contest. So there was no real amateurs in the contest. It was all former dancers from other clubs.
Whoa.
So I showed up to this thing wearing a traditional belly dance outfit, right? And I'm wearing like, I have no high heels. I'm literally wearing like sequins and, coins and the whole 9 yards. And I'm watching girls doing very elaborate and advanced pole tricks on 2-story poles. Okay. Like climbing up and doing these death dives and all kinds of things down. And I like put my name on the list and I realized I'm fucked. There's just no way I'm going to win this thing. Like I don't even look anything like these girls. I've never taken my clothes off in front of other people before. I don't even know how any of this works. Right.
Yeah.
So my friend's like, I've seen you dance. You're amazing. You've got this covered. I'm going, he goes, listen, even if you don't win, they'll still tip you. And I was like, they're going to tip me? I have no concept. Right. I was like, okay, all right, well, I guess I'll do it. And I was last. And so I go up on stage and I still remember that I played Sting's Desert Rose as one of my songs. I wanted to pick something that people could identify with because most belly dance music is, a little bit too ethnic for, I would think most guys who go to strip clubs. Yeah. And I remember that I had no idea what to do with the poles. And so I just tried to like dance around them. And I completely forgot to take my clothes off. And so I think maybe like the last 15 seconds or something, or 20 seconds. And I was like, oh shit, I'm supposed to do a thing. Right. And what is good for me is that I love dance. And so I just lost myself in the music and I just tried not to think about all these men who are staring up at me with their little hopeful faces. And, and so when I was done, I looked down and the stage is covered with money. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then there was standing applause. Like guys stood up and were clapping for me in a strip club. And of course, I've never been in a strip club before, right? So I've been to one small little rural strip club. So I had no idea anything was supposed to happen or not happen or anything. And I'm trying to gather up my money. And this bouncer comes over and he's like sweeping it into this bucket. And I'm like, what are you doing? No, wait, that's mine. He goes, no, I'm getting it for you. Of course, I'm like very suspicious, like, what do you, don't touch my money, right? I worked really hard for that. And so he's like, don't worry, I'll bring it all over to you. And he like brings over this like ice bucket full of cash. And I'm trying to put my bra back on. I'm just kind of standing there. And the manager walks over and he's like, that's amazing. I've never seen that before. And I was like, see what before? It's like, I've never seen anyone stand up and applaud here before. And I was like, oh, okay, did I win? He goes, yeah, you won. You definitely won. And I was like, awesome, cool. He goes, can't you come into my office? And so mind you, like still wearing this jingly belly dance outfit. I am loud as hell. There's no way that I can't imagine what I looked like in this scenario, right? And I sit down and he goes, so you're going to start working tonight, right? And I was like, what? What do you mean? He goes, you're going to start working tonight, right? You won the contest. And I was like, no, I'm just here for the $1,000. He goes, yeah, but you could make a lot more than that if you want. And I said, what do you mean? I don't have lap dances work. I don't have any of this works. And he goes, listen, why don't you just try it tonight? See how it goes. Just do the same thing you're doing. Well, probably not dressed like that. I will buy you an outfit. and you see how it goes. And so he walked me around the club and bought me an outfit. Like there was like a little store that, Hustler always has their attached store.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, so this is how table dances work, and they're this price. And then here's how lap dances work over here, booth dances, how they work. And then here's the VIP section. And I said, okay, what's the difference in the dances? He goes, well, nothing really. It's just that this one is X price and this is Y price. And then that one's up there is, the champagne room is this price. And I said, well, why would I sell anything else besides champagne rooms? And he goes, you're a smart cookie, aren't you? And I'm thinking, that doesn't feel like it's rocket science. But okay, I said, well, and I was like, I don't know. I just didn't feel like perhaps devaluing myself by selling my time in very small increments is the way I would like to go. And he goes, I think you'll do just fine. So my very first night, I just walked around and I was like, would you like to get a champagne room? And guys were like, yes. I didn't even take off my clothes for most of it. I was like, oh, this is great. I spent half the time getting my feet rubbed. And I thought, well, shit, maybe I did find my calling, right? And it was not long after that Hustler asked me to do a performance for their taboo night. And, so they have like a big kink night. And all of a sudden I had guys coming in who were paying me champagne room prices to do ball busting and to do, like some big basic tease denial stuff and like to be able to worship my feet. And I thought, yeah, this is it. This is the thing I want to do. But unfortunately at that time, my understanding of pro doms they were not the kind of people that I would look up to, mostly because I just hadn't been exposed to the echelon of people that we are. And I thought, well, maybe my understanding of this is wrong, but like I kind of thought of like pro doms as being similar to, to escorts. And, like I had a very deeply ingrained sense of the hierarchy because it was, a long time ago and I just didn't have that much experience with it.
Yeah.
And I very quickly, as I got more exposed, thought, this is amazing. This is exactly the role that I wanted to do. And so I cameoed at for a couple of sessions at a dungeon in Baltimore, and I promptly moved to Columbus and started a career, opened my own dungeon not more than, probably 2 years later. I bankrolled my whole dungeon by dancing. I really loved dancing, but I found that there was kind of a disproportionate schedule happening between dancing and doing sessions. And that was it. And I was like, I've ever found my home.
That's really amazing.
Yeah,
that's a really great story, coming to, dance at a huge hustler. That sounds like the Vegas of a hustler.
It was Vegas strip club. Yeah.
Yeah. That's massive and completely intimidating. So to still to not walk out from that and just to continue to do it no matter what happened. That's the confidence you also need to be a dom. You're right.
I mean, I have no problem being brave. Just didn't always have the sense to make the best decisions about what I was being brave with.
Well, we all have to make our mistakes to learn the biggest lessons, right?
Absolutely. I wouldn't trade any of them for the world.
So when you decided to move to Columbus, did you decide to move to Columbus to really start your own kind of play space and dungeon and all of that after doing, some, stints at some houses, or what was the catalyst, all of that?
So the unfortunate catalyst was my now ex-husband. I knew that I wanted to work in professional BDSM, and that I this was something I really wanted to do. I was studying sexual behavior psychology at Johns Hopkins when I was in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So I knew that part. The catalyst for me was I wasn't working any houses as much as that I had a friend who basically did some professional BDSM work on the side. She wasn't a big name or anything. She just had a little home dungeon, and she asked me to come in for a couple of sessions. And I thought, well, this was fun. So I wonder if there's something to this. And I had been a lifestyler before that, so that was kind of part of why I had a bit of that hierarchy ingrained in me, was that I'd gotten into the lifestyle, and I thought, and like lifestylers in the East Coast have a bit of a contentious relationship with professionals, or at least they did at the time.
Yeah.
No, but when I moved to Columbus, it was for my now ex-husband, and unfortunately, he was a bit predatory in that situation, and I think he saw me as the golden goose, and he was like, "You could be big, you could be great," and kind of pushed me to do a lot of things that I did, and although I am fairly grateful for having had the opportunity to do things, and I certainly got really lucky in having started a dungeon and then doing the video production that I do. Looking back on it, I wish I had known then that, it was a predatory situation, but.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking,
Sure.
Was he in the scene as well, or was he more like in the scene lifestyle, or was it in the scene more professionally? And that's kind of how the predatoriness kind of happened.
He was supposedly in the scene as a lifestyler, which is kind of how I found him. And but I later found out that he had a history of doing this. His last ex-girlfriend, who was only, a few months out of the relationship and then started with me, was a top performing cam girl. And a top performing cam girl. And so his whole MO was like managing. He was the the classic suitcase pimp kind of thing where guy shows up and it's like, of course, I approve of all your life choices. Just let me manage you, and I'll take a percentage or all of your money.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
I would love if you would speak more about this, because this is, I guess, something that people don't understand happens not only to people in this industry, but to women in general, how, especially the conversation of sex trafficking, right? Human trafficking. There is these idea that there are these network of people, when a lot of times it's actually someone close in your life, right?
Oh, yeah.
A current boyfriend, a relative that actually exploits women, compared to this industry network in the black market.
Yeah, it was someone didn't steal me from a rest stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And I should preface this is that there was a federal sex trafficking investigation. And it was not handled well by the police, and so this happened later, again in retrospect, but no, he was 20 years older than me. I mean, I was 19, and I just I was just very fresh-faced and hopeful, and here I was with a lot of natural talent, and he was like, we can do this, and we can make this kind of money, and we can go to Vegas, and we can do all these things. And so the things that I wanted to do were very much wrapped up in wanting to make my partner happy. At the same time, here I was trying to build my career as a dom. And I think it's actually fairly common. And it also was much more common too at that time, because remember, this was 15 years ago, when as sex workers, we didn't have as much front-facing publicity around, about female empowerment. And it was still very much hush hush. And, to have a partner who was like, I'll be the go-between, I'm the more senior person, I have all this business experience, I'll help you, I'm going to quit my job so I can do this full time. And really what it ended up being was, he was just a type of pimp. And then these situations are much more common than people realize. And I was really embarrassed about it for a long time, because here I was this very high profile dom, and I was supposed to be very well known and so powerful and all this stuff. And here I had basically been this victim, and the victimization happens over a long period of time, right? Someone doesn't just go in and be like, I'm taking everything you have and I'm gonna, they work themselves into it. And, we were together for 11 years, and I would get to the point where I was like, wait, where's all the money going? Where's this going? Where's that going? And it was always very much tied up in these grandiose schemes and, in these kind of these esoteric things, like we created this big dungeon, and we were bringing on all these girls, and then I began to realize that he was exploiting the other girls the same way that he was exploiting me. And when I realized these things were happening, that's when I tried to shut all these things down. And I realized again that when someone wants to take control of something and you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know how to sign the right paperwork, and you haven't basically protected yourself, is that they can, especially in sex work. That's why it's about something as simple as what people are talking about. Like I'm making content with my partner, and like, you need to make sure you have model releases for these things, is that you never know who, if someone wants to come back and hurt you on it, and they will. And he did, he tried to. So we went through, for years of me just trying to get my life back, and the other girls that he'd basically kind of destroyed their lives. And it's an embarrassing thing to kind of admit, but it is pretty common.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, I just think it's amazing for you to talk about this, because, I think more people and more women need to hear like this is what happens, because everything, like, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how that relationship's going to end. And as we all know, relationships end, and sometimes they end in a very nasty way. And you want to make sure to protect yourself and all of that, because we don't have as many rights as, people don't realize that,
And sometimes it's insidious too. It's not, I don't think, like in this particular situation, my ex was a, pretty elaborate narcissist. And I don't like to use that word lightly, because I think people use the word narcissist when they really just mean someone who may not really know what they're doing, and might be self-absorbed. But sometimes it's insidious in that, like, someone really looks like they're really trying to help you, or they're out for their own good, and you just didn't negotiate the situation well. Or it happens when you're a novice sex worker and you get involved with your partner, and both of you are kind of pushing for the same thing, but then all of a sudden that you become successful, and all of a sudden there's a big income disparity between you, and the other partner feels entitled to that, and feels like, well, I participated, I helped you with this, why aren't I getting my share? And everyone, these things can be very complex and complicated, and especially in the relationship that we have now between financial independence and female empowerment, is that it can be a complex thing to navigate in a relationship too.
Yeah, definitely. And this is something you do a lot of education work around, right? Tell us about the type of education work you do and kind of what you offer, especially because I know you were offering a lot of, especially during the pandemic, right? A lot of classes for, sex workers. And so what made you get into the education part, and, what do you offer now for both, sex workers and for, kinky folks in general? Yeah.
I started out teaching at DomCon, and then like doing local BDSM events and stuff. And I very much enjoyed just teaching regular people about BDSM. And I had taught sex workers, but more in the ladies that I had mentored, or, I sort of become that resource of just the person who kind of knew the most about cameras. And people would call me and be like, how do I do for this camera? And what do you recommend for this? And how do I do for my lighting? And I wasn't classically trained in any of this. I was just very, I was just very obsessive about learning it. And I've since, filled in a lot of those gaps. And then I've also, I've hired people who know more than I do and have them teach it to me. But at this point, I should say, like last year at this point, I began to see so many in-person sex workers now having to go to online, and I saw the deluge of content creators happening, and I realized that most people didn't really know what they were doing when it came to content creation, and I wanted to help bridge that gap. And so I decided to do what was I think a 10 or 12 part course. I think it's maybe 10. I don't remember. It feels like it was a long thing. And I decided I was going to try to do a class every week It was essentially a college course, and I had help, with some of the ladies in the collective, but I was doing a lot of it myself. And I thought this was crazy. Like I can create a BDSM class in a weekend, no problem, because I've been teaching that stuff for years. But to teach someone how to do, say, how to talk to a camera, or how to do productivity, or how to decide what platforms you're going to sell on, or how to do your own lighting, how cameras work, and then to write entire ebooks to go with them was a huge undertaking. So that was part of my pandemic project. And honestly, what it taught me was that I love teaching sex workers. I love to see other sex workers succeed. I will be the most fulfilled, I think, in my life when I phase out more from doing my own video production and I get to focus on more education, because watching someone become financially solvent through sex work and watching that process that happens when someone starts to go, I have a 401k now. Like I bought my first house. I can do these things, and realize that they can do it and they can manage their own businesses this way is really, really satisfying.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing. And especially, just from your own experience to just knowing, like wanting to give back for that, because you've experienced, a very manipulative person who took advantage of you, right? And not wanting any other woman to go through that.
Sure.
So.
And I also think that like financial independence makes you a better partner, because if you're coming to the table as an independent person without, having to be economically dependent on someone else, then that's no longer part of the trade-off. Now you can actually be there as just you and appreciate that other person for who they are, not just what they're paying.
Definitely. So that kind of leads me to your collective then. Your Wicked Collective. So how did that all start? And, just give us more detail of like the collective itself.
Sure. All right. So the collective was kind of built in the ashes of what was happening with my divorce and the unravelment of the old studio, in which that several of the ladies at the old Wicked Eden wanted to come with me. Like I had left, and then they're like, we want to come with. And so I spent 6 months in France, and had lots of therapy. And then through all of that, I decided, okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to face this down the right way. I'm not going to run away from this problem. And how can I make this thing better? And that led me to believing, well, the old dungeon model was that, girls work for a house, and the house books the appointments and usually gives the girls a percentage of their hourly rate. And this never really sat well with me, because I felt like it could be fairly exploitative. There's certainly good houses out there, don't get me wrong. But the situation could be fairly exploitative when you're kind of forced to work certain hours, you're forced to take certain kind of appointments. You're not the person who's essentially in charge of your business. You're just, a contract, essentially, person inside the space. And I thought, what if we ran it like a collective, like a farming co-ops do, and how farming co-ops work, where like it's different farmers band together and they share the resources of like all the equipment and whatnot. Each farmer, utilizes their own land, but then they all kind of share in the expenses.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder if that could work. And so what happened was that Des, who is my right hand and now the director of operations, who was at the time my assistant, joined in with me along with Noelle Knight, who was my other founding member, and said, well, this idea sounds crazy, but if you believe in it, we'll do it with you. Mm-hmm. And so we did. And so now the Wicked Collective is nine ladies strong. And we all entirely share in 100% of the resources. Each person has their own business. They're completely independent. And we take a share each of the expenses of the space and what it takes to run everything. And then we all kind of take turns doing things like the social media or like the back end work. When we have stuff we have to do at the dungeon, everyone pitches in. And because everyone essentially has a collective share, in it, both the responsibility as well as in the joy of it.
That's awesome. I think that's a really good model because from someone who started at a house, there was a lot of things, I know there might be some good houses out there, but to be honest, I've done so many of these interviews and everyone who started at a house is like, eh.
Exactly. And the thing is, it's expensive to have a dungeon, as you know. Like it is a bottomless money pit, right? And so to be one person with a dungeon, it can be extraordinarily expensive, but to have a group of people with a dungeon, which you can share it, makes it a bit easier to deal with. As long as somebody is not up at the top taking all the money and running the show. And so this is kind of the way we do it is everyone essentially makes their own schedules. They do their own things rather than renting the space. The studio manages the membership fees and does all the record keeping. We have a scheduling system and then each person takes all their own tributes and we never have things broken. There's never an issue with the space. Everyone pitches in. We all vote. Like during the pandemic, we essentially everything was a collective decision making about when we would be taking sessions, what we were doing for our pandemic protocols. How do we deal with clients for this? How are we going to close? When do we want to reopen? And if everyone wasn't on board, we didn't do it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really amazing too, because what you said about, things getting broken, if everyone's invested, then everyone cares for everything as their own, right? And if one member is not holding up their part of the agreement, then you all have a conversation and are able to address it and kind of vote in it. And it makes things so much more democratic in a lot of ways.
And it's also that our membership fees, everybody essentially pays a portion of their membership to the collective. Our membership fees go up or down based on how well certain things are going in the collective. So we have a collective OnlyFans where we previously had a Patreon, and Patreon was, not looking like the best place for adult stuff. So we moved over and, everybody pitches in. It's also the same way that we pitch in with marketing, because the better that the space does, the lower everybody's fees are, right? Because it's all a percentage. And so if something were to break or to go wrong, we all have to pitch in to get it repaired or to get fixed. So everyone takes care of it like it's theirs.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in regards to memberships, it's almost, do you guys have a cap? Do you guys only? Yeah. So basically, I go through the financials. We go through the financials. Everything is full transparency. And if something were to change, it goes up or down. And anything we have left over goes to the new dungeon fund, which we were buying a new dungeon last year, literally at the beginning of March last year. Sorry, the end of March last year. And a loan fell apart the week before it. I mean, I'm talking about a massive, beautiful place with a pool. Can you imagine a dungeon with a pool, right? Yeah.
And I'm so glad that it did and I was heartbroken, of course. It was all Corona, it was all pandemic related and all that. But is that we would have had a huge overhead of a dungeon that we would have probably not been able to handle. And here we were not having the best of time, having to stay in our smaller space, but we made it through. We survived all the way through, and especially as many dungeons as have had to close this year. The last year, it's been pretty tragic. So
I mean, the universe definitely threw you a bone for that, though, because no one realized how long this was going to last, and that would have been horrifying and so upsetting to have to sit on this thing you couldn't do anything with.
Sure. And as it was, we had sessions slow down to a crawl, as it did for everyone, because our protocols were pretty aggressive. And I found out that there were, so my ex still operates the old studio in the city under a different name. And I found out that they were doing things without protocols and forcing the other girls to go do out calls and stuff during the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty awful. And as I'm watching these things happen, the other staff are going, I'm glad this isn't us. And, and I'm glad that we're making, we kind of all pitched in together and and anything that we didn't have, I threw in the extra. I just made sure that I covered us and it worked. The classes, the education, everything we did, it all worked and we got there.
That's awesome. I mean, I didn't realize there were so many dungeons in Columbus. A booming, it's quite a boom. I've actually only been there once for a wedding, so I don't know the kink scene at all. But I did not realize like the kink scene was so vibrant. It seems like.
I mean, Columbus is a pretty large city. It's like the 11th largest city in the United States, and it's fairly like white collar tech oriented. So there's more people have more disposable income. But before this, my dungeon was the only dungeon, and so now, now there's just as you can see, I don't let it bother me anymore. I don't let things live rent free in my head, and we just keep on doing what we're going to do, and we do it well, and the world will take care of itself.
That's definitely. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking. So I want to go back kind of to your youth, because you mentioned that you were lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So what is some of your first memories, and how did you get into the lifestyle? Because I think that's something that a lot of people always like, how do I do this? How do I meet other people? How do I, that's the question, you get from so many who want to, meet other kinky folks. But how did that start for you?
Oh gosh, like meeting kinky folks nowadays is so much easier than it was then.
Yeah.
So I originally thought I was lesbian, and I had kind of a thing with a girl that I had met during tryouts for a play, and we ended up being in the same play together. And we had a bit of an informal DS relationship. And to kind of give you perspective is that I'm a third generation animal person. My grandmother had horses. My mother had dogs. Like my grandmother was in a horse trainer. She was gentling Mustangs in Texas. So I grew up training animals from basically very small. And when I suppose this kind of translated into my relationships is that I just kind of naturally took on a leadership role with her. And a couple months into the relationship, she goes, "I think you're a mistress." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was 16 at the time, I believe. And she brings me and wraps it up. I remember her wrapping it up with comic book paper, or like comics from like the Sunday paper. And it was "Screw the roses, send me the thorns." She like presents it to me. And I open it up and I read it, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she just like, "They have a munch in the city. We should go." I was like, "What the hell's a munch?" Okay. Mind you, I'm 16. She's 15. Right.
Yeah.
They've gotten a lot better about doing things like checking IDs, but when we rolled into ATGI Fridays, all right, they didn't ask us. We just kind of sat down, and here I was like, I, bought a collar for her online and like did the whole 9 yards. I was like, "You're my slave, you're my collared slave." I had no idea what I was doing. I absolutely had no idea what I was doing. And so we sit down and we meet these people, and I realized that everyone in this entire room is at least twice my age, and at least twice my weight, and at least twice as angry at me for being there. And I felt very ostracized about it. I didn't feel like I fit in on any level, right? Like I was like, there was no one who looked like me, no one who, represented the same way I was. And it was very male dom, femme sub too.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I just want to learn about kink here, sort of thing. And I didn't get very good warm reception out of it. So we came home, and I said, "Oh, we're never doing this again." That led me to getting on bondage.com and deciding that, oh wait, there were other kinky people out there.
Yeah.
But most of my kink, at least early kink experience, was mostly self-taught, because I thought the local community sucked.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how it all transpired.
In the most roundabout sort of way, yes.
I love that. I thought I was a lesbian. So do you identify differently now, just in general?
I identify as queer, so I'm queer and I'm polyamorous. I have a primary partner who is male, but I would certainly say that I'm more about people in a relationship rather than gender in a relationship, and so it depends on where that chord strikes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to questions because we're about that time. So for those of you who are watching and listening, feel free to type in your questions. And as long as it's respectful, I will pop it onto the screen and ask them. For all of you, if you look down, scrolling on the screen is Goddess Alexandra Snow's website, Twitter, both Twitters. For the Wicked Collective and the Instagram. All right, so we do have a question. Do you have any books, articles, movies around BDSM that really resonated with you?
Yeah, actually. So at the time, the Marketplace series, Laura Antonio's Marketplace series was the first real representation to me of female dominance in literature that spoke to me. And actually, as a result, is why I took on the first name Alexandra after the main character. Because I thought that's the dom I wanted to be, And I think that was probably most instrumental, I think. Yeah.
I love that book series. It was so tantalizing. We have it at the space, and Dia was like, "Can I borrow this?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I've had it a really long time. And then she was just like, "I am into this," and I'm like, "I know, right? I know."
I think also that was like the first time I ever had like a really, really good like solo masturbation session with a book, and I was like, "I think this is me," like.
I know there are some hot moments where you're just like, it's very hot. We have another great question. Are there any healing or spiritual aspects of your BDSM practice you would like to discuss?
Ooh, that's a great question. I am very firmly in the camp of a BDSM and kink as a healing activity, especially as someone who went through a lot of trauma, and I found that the connective experience of being able to both release as well as to be on the receiving end of someone else's release has been such an instrumental part of both my my own healing as well as watching healing for others. But I don't know. I think that is, at least from a practice, is much more of an individual connection of like the relationship that you build with each person, and how that happens over time, and not necessarily a specific related to an activity.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm much more of a relationship oriented dominant. So I'm more about building the relationship, building the connection, and having it, move over time rather than just having individual sessions. So I would say that that's more of a healing vein.
Awesome. Do you have your own spiritual identity? Like, are you a Buddhist or any of that, or what do you identify?
I identify as pagan. I'm actually Native American. So my spirituality starts in that camp and has moved more into kind of more generic Native American with pagan pagan attributes. And so the divine feminine is obviously plays a pretty central role there.
Yeah, very much. We have another great question. How has the BDSM community changed since you started?
I don't know that I can answer that because I don't know about all of the BDSM community everywhere. I think that the globalization and widespread connection of people with BDSM, like through especially things like FetLife and through Reddit and Twitter, and making BDSM more accessible, or at least more prominent, has definitely brought about less of a cliquish elitism, although you certainly like elitism happens everywhere in every community, but I'm not really well involved in my local community, mostly because there's still some animosity between like the pros do it for all the wrong reasons kind of crowd. But
Yeah.
so I just decided I would create my own community of sex workers instead.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, we have some other great questions. So, Goddess Snow, you used to, and hopefully you can come back to making YouTube videos about down-to-earth discussions on kink that has helped many, including me. Any plans coming back and doing more?
Hi, Nate. I stopped doing things on YouTube because YouTube got so aggressive with, their adult topics and anything and everything that could be construed as, adult, having the threat of being taken down. So I might, again, one of the problems I have is just time. And, if I feel like I can make some time for it, I will. But YouTube hasn't always been like the best marketing vehicle. So I might try to squeeze in a couple here and there as I can. Certainly I have a video called Being Submissive is Okay. And it has more views than anything else. And I would love to make a sequel to that because I think it's really important.
That's awesome. Oh, so kind of on this topic, where do you spend your most time, just for people to know of, are you mostly content making, and where can people find that? Or are you, back to in person? Where do you like to spend your time, and how people can find that?
I straddle the chasm pretty evenly, is that I do equal parts. Well, during the pandemic, I was obviously doing more content production, but I do both in-person sessions as well as doing content production. You can find everything about me on AlexandraSnow.com. My membership site has the wealth of videos. My clip stores have the most recent videos, but you can also buy those recent videos on my website on GoddessSnow.com. I'm pretty well known in all of the major markets. Like, I want clips and clips for sale. I've been a top store on clips for sale for years. And so because of that, a lot of people didn't realize I was actually an in-person dom. They're like, oh, I thought you just did videos. And it's like, to be fair, I love doing custom videos a lot. And I love doing sessions. And so I'm excited that the pandemic is over, that I can go back to doing more videos with slaves and less videos of me evil monologuing to the camera, because last week I just made my 2700th video, and I'm don't be wrong, I love what I do. It makes me great money, and I am super, super, super privileged to, to make the kind of money that I do, but I'm getting real bored.
Online work is rough sometimes, especially when you're by yourself doing everything. Monologuing to a camera, sometimes you're just like, I need interaction.
Yeah, I am incredibly fortunate that I early in my transition away from my ex, I hired the most amazing person ever in Daddy Does, and she has, between her and then bringing on Aurora last year, who's the other part of my creative team, I don't get to be alone anymore. Like, I have 3 amazing individuals who help keep me going, because doing it by yourself is rough. And I did do that for a long, long time, but I couldn't keep doing it if I was doing it by myself anymore. And also, we run multiple sites. I'm doing OnlyFans and Avian Stars and a membership site and multiple clip sites, and running a dungeon and doing sessions and having the collective. There's no way I could do that by myself.
Definitely not possible. We have another great question. What are the first few items you would advise a new baby dom purchase for starting out? Essential clothing choices, ? Thank you.
I hate the term baby dom, just as an FYI. I know that you're calling yourself that, but everyone starts out as a novice somewhere, and to call you a baby is kind of like saying that you're not an adult, and you're already a full-fledged adult who's making great choices about wanting to get in the sex industry. So congratulations. As far as clothing choices, we used to say that when you started as a dom, you should have one latex outfit, one leather outfit, one lingerie outfit. These are the 3 classic looks. I'm going to revise that and say that you should choose the clothing that appeals to you. Mm-hmm. If you are more interested in making sure that you can you want to satisfy a couple of core fetishes, that's great. But it's much better to simply just pick the outfits that reflect who you want to be, what is expression of your own dominant persona, rather than worrying about like, am I hitting all the major things? If someone really wants to see you in something, then they can buy it for you. Otherwise, if you love nylons, if you love silk and satin, if you love spandex, if you love, like designer jeans and that's your look, then go into that look. There's no such thing, I think, anymore as a dominatrix like uniform.
Yeah, I agree. How about tools? What would you say?
I would say that get a really good strap-on. Get a really good strap-on harness. Like when you first start out, and like everybody, I think everybody's been there when you're like, you've been a pro dom, when you get like that cheap strap-on harness and you start to use it and you realize that the dildo falls out, it's pinching, it's like riding up in all the wrong places. I could tell by your smile that you've been there, and you're like, what have I done here? This is not a sexy experience,
I've just seen, I mentor and I've seen people and I tell them, I'm like, nope, that looks horrible. Like, you've got to use the correct brands, cleanliness, like there's all sorts of things that go with it. But who are some of your favorite brands,
I am a big, big fan of the original Stormy Leather Terra Firma harness. Like it's a standard split harness with that's open in the back, and it for whatever reason just really fits well, and so we've got a bunch of them. I don't know, like I like to not have any pinching and pulling. I want my strap on to stay exactly where I want it to be the whole time I'm using it. What about you?
Yeah. For me, I actually like Aslan leather, but I use the rubber ones, and that's because it's easy, clean, just like really hygienic. And for me, I just think they've fit the most like option sizes, especially because I don't do necessarily so much small stuff. It's usually around medium, but it can too. And it's just more about like cleanliness factor, and it's just like quick, easy. And for I have a very slim, petite type, so it's good for my body size. I can't really say if someone's curvier, if that's one they would enjoy, but that's all. Body shapes do matter for finding a harness that works for you.
I have actually always wanted to get an Aslan, so maybe I should actually put that on my wish list. Yeah. I will say that the Terra Firma is great for a mixture of body sizes.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then someone has another question. I find you so captivating. You radiate positivity. Do you have a video course for your classes?
Yes. So all my classes are currently on Gumroad, and it's gumroad.com/Wicked Collective. I'm sorry, Wicked Alliance. Sorry, that was the name of our group. And if you DM me on Twitter, you must be on Twitter. I can also send you an invite. We have a pretty thriving Slack channel for the Wicked Alliance, which is kind of like my sex worker support group that we kind of created during the pandemic. If you also go to wickedalliance.com, there should be some links still to the classes. I don't really keep up on the site very much, but those are all those are.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we got in all the questions. There is one that, I'm gonna put it up, because these are sometimes the questions and you can kind of answer it however you feel like. Have you ever turned someone submissive, and how did it feel?
Well, I don't think you can turn someone anything. It's kind of like saying, have you ever turned a girl gay? Well, if she's down there licking my pussy, I'm pretty sure she wasn't straight. Okay, I didn't turn her gay. However, that being said, the feeling of being able to bring out someone's submissive desires and make them feel comfortable in expressing the desire to submit to someone else is certainly an amazing feeling.
Yeah, sometimes these questions are very good for educational purpose of let's rewrite that question a
Sure.
little. Yeah,
I mean, I generally feel that most people don't really understand that you have these desires. You're just waiting for someone to make you feel safe enough to talk about them.
very
So,
much.
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely believe everyone has some sort of kink. It's just sometimes, the right moments happen to kind of get them out there, and make you aware of them. And
I mean, Noelle, who's one of the ladies in my collective, Noelle Knight, she says, I don't believe there are any vanilla people. I just believe there are people who haven't been exposed to the right kink for them yet.
yeah,
And that's true.
definitely true. So, Alexandra, is there any other projects, events, or anything? I know we're kind of getting, closer to hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel for this pandemic with people getting vaccinated. So, is there any events, things that you want to put out there for people to follow, to look forward to, or any of that?
Well, I will say that if anyone's really very interested in the progression of the Wicked Collective, to join the Wicked Collective's OnlyFans is only $5 and helps to support our new endeavors. And that's probably the biggest one that we're working on. The next one I'm working on has been a little bit of a top secret project, but we are going to be doing a new production project that is going to be all very cinematic storytelling porn made by all these awesome queer ladies. And
Awesome.
and so the only thing I would say is that if you're another content creator or a model and you would like to be involved in a very rad queer project and you'd like this to be put on the list for someone to film with this year, then to send me an email, because that would be the next best thing.
That's really awesome, and I'm looking forward to that because first off, femme creators and, creators that are expanding the idea of what porn looks like out there are so important, and moving away from just typical cisgendered male gaze,
Yes.
right? So.
And the problem is that like porn has always followed a similar pattern, because men were the one who were buying it. So we made porn for men, and it just kept informing itself this way. And until someone goes, hey, but not everyone who's a cis male is the one who's watching porn, what everybody else, until someone says, oh, well, but if you make it, no one's going to buy it because none of those people ever buy it. Well, it's not true. And, so now we're getting involved because honestly, we just wanted to make the porn that we wanted to watch.
Yeah. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to thank our wonderful guest, Alexandra Snow, for joining us. And we look forward to all the amazing things that will be coming up, and hopefully for everyone to get back out and playing and, getting back in the dungeons, and also supporting your local dungeons by booking your sessions and, and tipping, of course.
Yes, the best way you can show your love and support is by supporting our endeavors with money, because trust me, that's what we need.
Yeah. And not getting content from all these free services that are stealing them too. So support your content makers as well, if you want to continue to see it.
Yep.
For those of you who love our show, who want to support us, because again, this is an endeavor of love by Dia Dynasty and I that we do not make money on either. But you can support us by joining our Patreon. We have many different options, and it offers many different membership rewards as well. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Alexandra, for joining us. And please have a good week, a good Monday and a good week. Bye, everyone.